We anticipate that there'll be need to have a conversation on the global response to the Ebola challenge. It needs, again, a united and concerted effort. And finally, I would say that it will be also important that the G7 come to understand that the level of interest and commitment they have been putting in other conflict areas, whether it is in Europe or in the Middle East. The reality is that the G7 seem to have neglected active engagement on the conflicts on the continent of Africa. Specifically, a classic example is the Sudan crisis. These are areas, in my view, that will require very, very special attention, and concrete outcomes and proposals on the way forward will be very, very useful to help in stabilizing the global economy and also putting an end to the conflicts that have caused severe disruption and humanitarian crisis in many countries. President Ruto has been a very, very important and consequential voice on behalf of the African Union on many global issues. So we expect him to speak to issues that are critical for Kenya, but even more important, he'll be speaking on critical issues on behalf of the continent of Africa. For Africa, the agenda is largely going to be on how the global economic architecture can be re-engineered so that it can be more useful and more effective in helping countries on the African continent to address the various economic and social challenges. I think that is going to be a very, very important issue. In short, it's normally framed as then a more equitable financial architecture. I think this is going to be a very important conversation. And this includes talking to issues of debt that affects many African countries or many emerging economies, middle income, low income, and emerging economies. That is going to be a core aspect of this conversation. The other aspect that really needs to come out here is that the conflicts, global conflicts, have had a devastating effect on many economies, and Kenya has not been spared. We welcome the announcement that a peace deal has been struck, particularly around the Middle East crisis. But what is more important is that that settlement or that agreement does not in itself erase the damage that has been caused to many economies. Okay, so there has to be a conversation on a recovery strategy for many economies, because the impact, the consequences, the inflationary pressures have already fed into the systems of these countries. And therefore, there is going to be a prolonged recovery period. And this needs to be tackled effectively so that we can have critical intervention mechanisms from the G7 and also from the G7 in the context of global institutions like the IMF and the World Bank.